Germany has voted, and it is the end of the road for Chancellor Olaf Scholz. He'll most likely be replaced by this man, Friedrich Merz. His Conservatives won the most votes today. At the age of 69, Merz is about to take his first job in government. He faces an anemic economy, a war raging in Europe, and Donald Trump in the White House. Now, this election also marked a historic rise in support for the far right. The Alternative for Germany, the AfD, won 20%. That's twice as much as the last election. They're headed for the opposition because no one wants to work with them, but their support, their power, they're growing. Tonight, they remain Germany's political pariah, but for how much longer? I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
We have won this election.
This is a bitter election result for the Social Democratic Party. This is also an election defeat.
We've achieved a historic result. The Alternative for Germany is now the second biggest party.
Tonight, we celebrate. Tomorrow morning, we'll get to work.
To our viewers watching on PBS in the United States and to all of you around the world, welcome. We begin the day, Election Day here in Germany, and this is what we know. There will be a new chancellor, most likely the head of the Conservatives, Friedrich Merz. His task of building a new government will be a challenge worthy of Superman, and that has a lot to do with the party that he has sworn not to work with, the far-right AfD. The AfD received 20% of the votes, doubling its support in this election. Yet the AfD remain political kryptonite, the party no one wants to govern with. Let's get right in with the projected numbers right now. The Social Democrats losing heavily from last time, around with only 16%. The Conservatives, they picked up some support. They finish top with just under 29%. The Greens at just under 12%. The Liberal Free Democrats failing to make that crucial 5% cutoff. They crash out of Parliament. And the AfD, as we said, doubling their support in this election. And the Left Party, they get close to 9%, also unexpected. Now, that means the Conservatives here in black get the most seats, followed by the AfD, and then the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Left Party are also in the new Parliament. So Friedrich Merz is the man most likely to replace the current Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Both men have been addressing their supporters. Take a listen.
I want to say a big thank you to all the voters who placed their trust in us and in me personally. I understand the responsibility and I understand the size of the tasks that lie ahead of us. I have deep respect for this, and I know it will not be easy. I also want to say a word of respect to our political opponents. We fought a very tough election campaign. But this election campaign was absolutely necessary to discuss the big and important topics that affect our country. Economic policy, migration, foreign policy and security, domestic security. But now we'll talk to each other. The main thing is to re-establish a government in Germany that's capable of acting as quickly as possible with a good parliamentary majority. Dear friends, the world out there is not waiting for us.
This is a bitter election result for the Social Democratic Party, and it's also an election defeat. I think that must be made perfectly clear in light of the results. And it's important for me to say that after this result, we have to be united going forward. Last time the election result was better, and I had some responsibility for that. This time, the result is bad, and therefore I also have responsibility for that. I want to make that clear. It's also important for me to offer my congratulations to the Conservatives and their leader Friedrich Merz on his mandate to form the next government. Congratulations for the election result.
And the conversation continues here in the studio at the big table. To my far right is Benjamin Tallis. He's director of the Democratic Strategy Initiative here in Berlin. And right here beside me is our chief political correspondent, Nina Hazer. To both of you, good to have you with us. Nina, let me start with you. It's a given now that Friedrich Merz is going to be the next chancellor, right?
At this point in time, I'm very reluctant to say anything is a given. But yes, if you look at the numbers, Friedrich Merz does look set to become Germany's next chancellor, but he will have to form a coalition with junior partners or a junior partner. So coalition negotiations are going to take a bit of time still. And technically speaking, there are other options also where other chancellors could get into power, but that is almost out of the question now. So, yeah.
And Ben, Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor, he conceded defeat tonight, says he will not be leading coalition negotiations with the Conservatives. Is he finished as a political force?
Yes, I think so. As he himself said, he takes responsibility for this defeat. It's a pretty conclusive judgment on his signature policy, the so-called Zeitenwende, which was supposed to deliver meaningful change for Germany, but has failed to do so across all major points that it sought to achieve.
All right, we are going to look at what a Merz government would look like in just a moment. But first, here's a look at the man of the moment himself.
This is the man of the moment. Friedrich Merz just led the conservative CDU-CSU to their first election victory since the Merkel years.
The world won't wait for us. It won't wait for long, drawn-out coalition negotiations. We must be capable of acting again quickly so that we can do the right thing in Germany, so that we're present again in Europe, and so that the world sees Germany has a reliable government again.
His pledge? A U-turn on migration and the economy. His style, decisive, say his followers. Uncompromising, even abrasive, say his critics. Trump-like at times.
If I'm elected to be the Chancellor of Germany, on my first day in office, I will instruct the Federal Ministry of the Interior, using the Chancellor's authority to issue directives, to permanently control all Germany's national borders with its neighbours.
That reaction to a deadly stabbing by an Afghan asylum seeker saw him take a political risk. He crossed his own red line by allowing the far-right AfD, for the first time in German post-war history, to become the deciding factor in securing a majority in parliament. Tens of thousands took to the street in protest. Even Angela Merkel condemned his decision to accept AfD votes rather than seek compromise with other parties of the centre.
From my point of view, even under difficult conditions, it should not come to the point where majorities are achieved with the help of the AfD.
While Merz's political manoeuvre remained unpopular, his determination to act on migration struck a chord. Most Germans continued to believe his pledge to rule out any future cooperation with the far right.
We will not cooperate with the party that calls itself the Alternative for Germany.
Friedrich Merz is in many ways the opposite of Angela Merkel. Their parallel rise to the top of the conservative CDU party in the 90s and early 2000s turned into a political feud when Merkel beat him to become parliamentary party leader. Frustrated, Merz left politics altogether and made his fortune as a lawyer and board member for the American investment giant BlackRock, a career he sees as an asset. Critics fault him for his lack of experience in government. And Merz appears to feel most comfortable talking business. Addressing the global top brass of investors at the World Economic Forum in Davos, he left no doubt over his plans to reform Germany's welfare system.
We have to bring our labour market in order. We have this special sort of subsidies for people who are not working called Bürgergeld, which is a big mistake. We will change the system.
Throughout his campaign, Merz raised the alarm over the state of the German economy. Merz also promises to redefine German leadership, while the outgoing administration shared Merkel's mantra of leading from behind. Merz vows to turn Germany from what he calls a sleeping to a leading middle power.
The overarching maxim of a Conservative-led government will be, you can rely on Germany again.
Merz's Germany is back message will instantly be put to the test by Europe's struggle to define a common response towards the new Trump administration and its disruptive take on Ukraine. His analysis of this new reality is sober.
Today, we're not sure anymore if the Americans are still by our side the way they were after 1945, and if we can still rely on them.
As incoming leader of Europe's largest economy, Merz knows all eyes are on him over whether Germany is ready to take a lead. Friedrich Merz's election victory will drastically change Germany's political outlook. But there are two factors that will determine how much he will be able to translate into action: how complicated forming a government coalition will become, and what Donald Trump will do next. The uncompromising Friedrich Merz will have to compromise fast.
Ben, let me ask you, what speaks for, what speaks against the personality of Friedrich Merz as Chancellor?
Well, what speaks for, as we've seen in the very first TV appearance he's given since the election results, talking very clearly about the fact we can't rely on the US as an ally. He's clearly understood the situation there, talked about the need for independence. He's not shied away from big issues like the nuclear deterrent for Europe, the need to gun up in Europe, the need to actually protect Ukraine. That speaks to a decisive character. It speaks to an assertive character, which is the kind of leader that Germany and Europe could certainly benefit from in the Trump era. We have, however, seen him speak on a number of different issues in taking different positions on them. So we don't quite know which Merz is going to turn up, but I think we will find out in the course of his chancellery.
And Nina, the turnout tonight, what was it, 83, 84%? Huge. And we've seen that forming a coalition in the past can be very difficult, but with this type of turnout, and you could argue you do have a mandate to get something done here. Is that going to put pressure on parties to take responsibility and to do something for the country?
Absolutely. I mean, this country is politicized as it hasn't been for the last 30 years. So this is, I believe, the biggest turnout that we've seen since 1990. So, you know, a massive amount of people really going to the polls and making it very clear that they want their voices to be heard. A lot of it had to do, of course, with that very fierce debate about migration that we had, with AfD voters going to the polls, making it clear, OK, we must pursue a very hardline policy, something fundamental has to change. But equally, on the other side, a party like the Left Party managed to mobilise huge amounts of people is exactly with that message. We mustn't let the AfD get too strong. So, of course, now it all comes down to just how the Bundestag will, what the Bundestag will look like ultimately, how many parties are going to be in. And even Friedrich Merz is hoping that the FDP, so his natural coalition partner, doesn't make it into Parliament because that would make coalition forming more difficult.
All right. Well, forming a government, of course, is complicated by the insistence of all the parties that they will not work with the AfD. We're going to have more on that in just a moment.